Ah, wonderful. G'day, members. It's Seamus, your Whisky Club brand ambassador, and I'm here to introduce a tasting that's kind of really special to me because this is one of the distilleries that I used to get to work very closely with. Tonight, I'm joined by Stewart Buchanan, the former distillery manager and now global brand ambassador of the Benriach Distilling Company. G'day, Stewart. How are you?
I was going to say good morning there, but I'll say good evening, so we'll stay in the right time zone over there. Good to see you again, Seamus.
Oh, absolute pleasure as always, mate. And to accompany you on your journey through the distillery, we've got one of my other old compatriots, Linus Shaxman, joining us as well. Linus.
Hello, mate. Great to see you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, always a treat, mate. Always a treat. And I think you've whipped up something pretty special for us today. If I'm not mistaken, not only are we going to be talking about this wonderful little single cask here, but also a cheeky little virtual distillery tour.
Yeah, this is amazing. Obviously, we can't get the plane. We can't get there. It's been almost, I think, 4 years since I was there last. But we've got the next best thing. We've got this really amazing virtual tour, and Stuart's going to just go for a gander and show us around the distillery and what we do and how we do it and why Benriach just is the amazing whiskey it truly is.
I'm honestly excited because, Linus, last time you or I visited the distillery, it wasn't all schmicko, ready to be showing people around. I remember still complaining about having to wear a high-vis vest. So I'm very excited to see what it looks like these days. And I should say to everyone, because we have such a wealth of knowledge and Stewart Buchanan returning for yet another tasting, ask any of the questions that you possibly want to get answered on Benriach. And as always, we are running a giveaway. So on this one, we've got obviously a lovely sherry puncheon in this single cask, and we thought giveaway should be another sherry butt. So all you guys, or whoever wins the bottle, can do a wonderful little head-to-head comparison for themselves as well. So comment to win, watch to win, and we'll announce that before the end of the tasting as well. But I don't want to keep us away from the distillery for too much longer, guys. So without further ado, I might let you two go.
Sure. Well, I was just cracking. He's actually at the distillery, aren't you, mate? You're actually at the tasting room at Benriach.
I am indeed, and you maybe not recognise it because we have just finished this beautiful conversion now from what was the old office cottage into this amazing little visitor centre. Nice and tight, nice and bespoke, keeps a nice kind of close, homely feeling, let's say, when you come and visit Benriach. So you need to come back again and experience it yourself. It's a great facility to have. Not only doing the tastings, but also we've got a great archive shelf behind us that maybe you can't see, which you can go through the decades of Benriach. So it really is an experience when you come and visit us here now at Benriach, having this facility to hand.
No, it looks amazing. You're right. It's certainly changed since I was there. But as we were saying, it's pretty amazing. Stuart's got to walk us around the distillery. So I think without further ado, we get cracking. I reckon we get into it and we go for a gander and we go for a wander around this beautiful place called Benriach.
Sure. And there we go. That's us just outside of the main capital town of Speyside, which is Elgin. And we're really just about 3 miles south of Elgin on that main road that takes you right down through the Speyside route. So you leave Elgin, you will not miss us. The distillery sits right beside that main road, and the Benriach logo blazoned across that warehouse. There's no reason for anybody to miss us. So you can see here, this is us leaving Elgin, driving down further south. You're looking at maybe to the Cooperage, about 11 miles. You've further down, you've got the Cairngorm Mountains at the bottom of Speyside, roughly 50 miles away. You could call that the start of that Speyside road. So within this 40, 50 miles, north to south of that Speyside road, many distilleries, many attractions to see on the way. And again, we sit right on that main road. So yeah, beautiful location. And also you can see always beautiful blue skies at Benriach. So the myths of Scotland being always raining, just throw that away. Benriach's always got beautiful blue skies and sunshine.
That's CGI, mate, I reckon. CGI.
No, not at all real time. And as we pan around, what I love about Benriach, it almost nestles on this little highest point around that area. And right to the back there, there's a little farm called Riach Farm. There's also Riach House. So this area has always been known as Riach, the Riach, and Benriach, sitting slightly on top of that area, is where the name comes from, Benriach. It's a lovely, small, compact distillery, very easy to navigate. Production-wise, it flows extremely well, which we'll see in the way through. So hopefully you've enjoyed that little pan around of the landscape. And let's even just take a little bit of walk closer to the distillery itself. Actually, this is the building I'm in just now, this little cottage sitting right at the front. It was my old office, actually, back in the day, when I had my boiler suit and cap and my pen behind the ear days. And again, a little visual of the new refurbished visitor centre itself, with all these archived whiskies going back to the decades, right back to the early 70s. We don't have any 60s bottles there, but we can go right back to the early 70s. You can come and enjoy these drams at your leisure, or do one of the tastings we have in our tasting programme.
Amazing. Looks absolutely fantastic. You're right, it's changed so much.
It's nice, isn't it?
Out we go.
Very much fitting with the new branding of Benriach as well. Nice and clean, nice and sharp, very crisp, and just simple as well. Keeps it very simple. So yeah, hope you can come and see it soon, Linus, and even Seamus as well. Get yourself over back again. And from here, actually, we're only basically 5 meters to the start of the production. And as we go out of the visitor centre itself, we go straight into basically the beating heart of the distillery. You can see that beautiful old building, which is actually the floor maltings. What we're seeing there is the end of the floor maltings, which is the granary, the grain barns. And maybe you can see also that pagoda chimney, the Doig ventilator, which sits there above the kiln in that blue sky, which always shines and shows on Benriach. Charles Doig, I'm sure you're familiar, the designer of that ventilator, that pagoda, and it has become an iconic symbol of single malts, not only across Scotland, across the world. But when we look at the production of Benriach, it flows extremely well, as I mentioned. Straight ahead, we walk up this little road, and we see, first of all, our malt intake. Now, that little hatch in the ground, that's where the barley comes into the distillery. Basically, we'll take our barley from roughly about 15 miles away from a place called Bucky, just on the coast, the Murray coast. So it's very close proximity to us. It's delivered there, 28 tons each load of barley. And in that building, we have 6 bins containing, again, each bin holding a lorry's load of barley itself. And as you look across left through that production, it is really only about 55, 60 metres from where the barley comes in and to where the spirit comes out in cask to then enter the warehouse. So it's a beautifully flowing distillery, almost open plan. And as far as when I was there as a working distillery, it was such an easy distillery to work. One man can operate this distillery, or one operator can operate this distillery on their own, because it's such an easy one-level layout. There's no computerization, there's no automation, but again, very easy for one operator to almost through the course of production do every part himself or herself. So that's a great, for me, it's one of the great assets is that lovely compactness and flow to the distillery. And each point through the distillery, I always talk about, we drive production in this extremely fruit-forward manner. From that barley coming in, we want that barley. Benriach, or even Speyside in general, you could mention Orchard Fruits, for example, a signature character. That's the character we want to continue the drive of in our production, to harness as much of that orchard fruits running through. And every stage we could emphasise and drive that forward. You know, the first thing, I suppose, we start off with the mashing. You know, taking that water, taking that barley, and the first infusion of waters through that barley to really extract what I feel is always one of the, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most maltiest, sweetest worts I've ever come across. Yeah. Also, the clarity of the wort, extremely important as well. You had any questions there, Linus? You quite happy I just run along with this?
No, lovely. I mean, it's a good question for me. Is like, do we do any of the malting ourselves in the distillery?
Yes, well, we will have a wee peek in the maltings at the very end, and we actually now have our malt season, which normally corresponds with the Speyside Whisky Festival. Towards the end of May, end of April, beginning of May, we'll operate the floor maltings for around about maybe 6 or 8 weeks, giving us a very small parcel of own produced malted barley, which then actually goes into one of our beautiful seasonal expressions, malt season, which will also be released around that time. So we can really celebrate the fact that we have the floor maltings in operation in Speyside, which is a great asset again to have. So we're in the mill room, as you can see. We're just panning around the mill room. Iconic Porteous mill, as you can see there, dating right back to 1965. A geeky point of this is it's one of the first ceramic-lined Porteous mills. Maybe not a point you would point out to normal consumers, but with it being ceramic-lined, it saves the corrosion of that grist eating into the cast iron. So again, it's quite a forward one-off mill, this Porteous mill, protecting that inner surface from the corrosive nature of the grist. And that mill, we're going to grind down the barley into the 3 separate parts we're looking for. We want the flour, the grits itself, and then the husk. Each part in perfect ratio to give us that beautiful extraction, again, leading into that sweet ball, keeping the husk there to help the drainage through the mash, and that flour just helps that consistency of the mash, so it's not too thick, not too thin. So we're grinding that into the grist mixture, which will ultimately end up in the mash. Our mash size here is 5.8 tons. So again, probably small to medium in size in comparison to today's distilleries. I think on average, most distilleries, if you were to put an average mash size, it would be about 9 tons, because there's many varying from maybe 3 tons up to 13, 14 tons. So you could say maybe 9 is the average of today's distillers. So we sit about 5.8. Also, what you can see here are lovely, it's a beautiful stainless steel mash tun. Now, this was put in mid-80s when the distillery was doubled in size, and basically we had additional 2 stills added and the new mash tun. But thankfully, they did keep it a traditional mash tun. So inside there, I hope you can see that the ploughing rakes, these ploughing rakes, as the water in the barley mixes together and comes into the mash tun. That ploughing rake only turns twice per infusion and then stops and gives us that steep time before we start then pumping. So a lot of people maybe look at this and feel that it's a louter tun or a more modern semi-louter mash tun. But although it is nice and shiny, which is great for keeping it nice and clean and sterile, the workings of it are purely traditional. Again, what a beautiful shot that is of the mash. That's actually just mashed in. So you can see that beautiful almost, let's call it a big porridge of that mash and the water coming in. Benriach's water source has a very high mineral content. We take our water from an aquifer, we have a borehole which takes that water up from that aquifer, and the high minerals and that purity of that water itself is a beautiful, let's call it the first building block in our production. And here, if I look at the flavour contribution we want from the mash, it is about being more gentle in that barley. We do use a 4-water system, which actually allows us to, let's say, be more gentle to the barley itself, exposing more of that sweet, harnessing more of that barley character. So when you smell the wort, it's just the pure barley sugars. If anybody's familiar with barley tea, for example, I know when I'm in Asia, you drink a lot of barley tea, and I always feel barley tea is a good example of that extraction of the wort that we're pulling from that. Again, beautiful clarity, which helps, I think, promote the further flavours we're going to get onwards, which will be driving that orchard fruit. So everything 6-hour cycle, from start to end, it's a 6-hour mash cycle. And from there, we have, as I say, we have 4 waters. The first 2 waters are going to get pumped to the fermentation for continuing the process. And then the second 2 waters will return to a tank above, which will then combine to be the first water of the next stage. So that said, the first 2 waters are going to be your fermenter waters, the waters with the bigger sugars in there that we can start that conversion. You'll also see as we enter into the mash house, into the tun room, you can see we have stainless steel washbacks. Now, they were put in 1977. Prior to that, I'm sure there would have been wooden washbacks there, but 1977 is where there was initially these 6 stainless steel washbacks. In 1985, when the distillery was basically upped in capacity, they did add an additional 2 washbacks in this small annex to the right. So you can see these slightly different shaped vessels from that 85 expansion. Stainless steel for me, beautiful for Benriach. What does stainless steel bring? Again, the sterile nature of that. We're not getting any bacterial secondary bacterial fermentation there. We're keeping it nice and fresh, keeping it nice and crisp. And by keeping that crisp nature, it will elevate the esters we're looking for, which will be the start of that orchard fruit journey. Also, we look for longer fermentations with stainless steel washbacks. You can, let's say, be a little safer and maybe push that fermentation a little longer. Sometimes with wooden washbacks, the temptation is that you push it longer, you might get additional flavors that are going to maybe make that too heavy or too rich with a wooden washback. Stainless steel, you can push that further, again, continuing almost this bright, crisp, fresh note that's going to run through your wash, your beer. So again, at average, we're looking plus 55 hours. I think we look at distilleries, shorts are maybe about 48 hours. Some people say long is 55 hours, but we're even sometimes going up to about 85 hours. So again, great length, making sure we're driving these flavors, building these esters. And if you taste this wash at this stage, it's almost like a tart cider, let's say. It's this beautiful, I always call it zingy, fresh, almost citrusy apple kick. And for me, that's the start of the orchard fruit journey. We're going to continue to progress through production. And then we'll take a wee wander through it. Hopefully you can see how open and, let's say, easy to navigate the distillery itself. Like for one operator, from there we can just walk through into the still house. And again, beautiful still house. This is one of the oldest buildings of the production. You can still see the old wooden roof beams there, original from that 1898 build when the distillery was initially founded. And as you walk through there, maybe what you can see is we do have the 4 stills. We also have a little space that you might see just to our right-hand side now. Now, you can see a little maybe grid work on the ground here. And also above, you'll see another port for where there would have been another condenser. So what was in there? It was our triple distilled spirit still. So Benriach, not only having their classic production through the decades, if not centuries, and the peated part of our production going right back to the 1970s, there was actually triple distill made at Benriach, and we have triple distilled from 1998, and we did restart the triple production in 2006, just by utilising the stills we have already. We didn't need to put another triple distill back in there. We can utilise the stills that we have and run that through for a third time. So that little gap does allude to the fact that we historically have been making triple distilled going right back to the late 80s. We also look at our still shapes there, beautiful pear-shaped stills. And if you want to just put an analogy to or a wee memory tag there, pear-shaped stills will give you pear-shaped flavours. So what we're going to expect to get from this shape of still is that orchard fruit. They're medium in height, I would say. Slightly off the horizontal as far as line arm, but no great decreasing angle, just slightly off the horizontal. So the weight of that spirit, we're looking for almost a syrupy texture. We're not wanting oils, for example, or a rich oily character. We want a more syrupy, sweet character, and that angle is perfect for harnessing that, almost mouthfeel and texture. The copper contact we have is amazing. You can see that slender, almost pear-shaped note. The copper contact we have with the spirit rising in that still, and the copper it's surrounded by, it's a really impacting copper note. And again, we know the more copper conversation we have, that's going to go towards ripening and sweetening that orchard fruit character.
So, Stu, we've got a quick question here about why the line arms disappear through the walls.
Yes, good point. Again, Benriach was maybe first founded. You can only imagine back in 1898, there would have been worm tubs, and the worm tubs would have been positioned outside. Come when the distillery reopened in 1965, they've obviously just removed that worm tub and kept the condensers outside. So we do have exterior condensers, which actually, if you wanted to go a bit, again, even on the geekier side of life, Rachel talked about even seeing a difference in seasonal spirit, where the nature of that outside condenser will react depending on the weather and maybe give you a slight nuance in your spirit as you go through the seasons. Now, that's something my palate is maybe not expert enough to detect. But I love when Rachel talks about even seeing little seasonal notes due to the conditions of the climate on the nature of how that spirit will be condensed.
Question for me, again, being geek and seasonal, would the wash change at all with the season when we're doing in the washback tanks?
Not so much, because again, I know when I was in production, I would look at the wort temperature almost daily to almost reflect the weather outside. Now that is a cold building in the winter, back through the fermenters. But depending on the temperature outside, I would have to look at the wort temperature and adjust that accordingly to give the yeast the best conditions to do its work. So I would always be monitoring that, always be adjusting it. You know, you would be going lower in the summer when it's warmer. You maybe take that wort temperature up slightly in the winter when it's colder. You're always looking for that optimum conditions for the yeast to be working at its best. So we keep that you're almost tweaking that, let's say, as we go through the year, keeping that exactly the same, hopefully.
And again, very quickly, geek questions. What sort of cuts do we do when we're taking the spirit off?
Yeah, sure. And again, maybe Douglas can pan right round again and we can look at the spirit safe a bit closer. Benriach, I always think of the middle cut as being that window of opportunity that you can capture the layers of flavour you're looking for. So hopefully you can see here, beautiful, maybe more traditional safe, which people will be familiar with. It's still hand operated. You can still move between the cuts, so very much hands-on. It's the operator who dictates when that moves over, by nose, by sight, by reading the instruments. But we have got a very large window of opportunity at Benriach due to these pear-shaped stills and the fact we run them very slowly, and we've got a beautiful slow running rate into the safe. We can really start to push that middle cut out. So our 4 shots are only 13 minutes. Now that for me is a very short 4 shots. You know, we can go on to that middle cut early. You go on to the middle cut early, what are you going to get? You're going to get the more volatile alcohols. These volatile alcohols will be all the more orchard fruits again, apples, pears, even maybe pineapple in some cases at the start of that cut, going in very early to the cut. And again, by running it slowly, we can really go down, maybe lower than other people could be possibly doing. So we cut right down to 60.5 ABV. We do it by strength and not by time. When it gets to 60.5 ABV, that's when we stop the cut. So it really is a huge window. By going a little bit lower, that's where we're continuing that barley character. The front end, we're keeping the fruits and exaggerating the fruits, but the lower end of the cut, we're looking to get into the barley depths. There's one, and actually the sweetness will appear through there. There's one funny thing with our peated whiskey, we do a little bit of a different cut. The peated spirit goes down to 59.5 ABV in the cut. It's only 1% lower. It's only about 10 minutes longer, but you may well taste a slight sweeter or more barley-focused note on the peated spirit due to that little change in the middle cut. Again, always tweaking, trying to get as much character from every angle of the cut and continue that drive of flavour we're looking for. Orchard fruits, sweet barley. That's Benriach's signature.
Amazing. It does taste amazing. We try it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the new make itself, it's actually spirity. It's not spirity, sorry, sugary. You know, we have the, I don't know if you can see this, I just grabbed a wee sample here. This new make spirit normally comes off the still 68, 68.5 ABV. But when you nose it, the sweetness of that barley is the first thing that shines through. Then you get that sweet orchard fruits, apples, pears. Yeah. But the viscosity is beautiful. I would describe it as syrupy rather than maybe an oily spirit, which again keeps that beautiful viscosity to the character in the dram. Also, I think when you look back at the historical distillers that came before us, we've always known that Benriach is a very versatile spirit. You can do a lot of things with Benriach spirit and it'll still remain Benriach. Whether that be triple distillation, whether that be peated spirit, whether that be moving it into the secondary cask maturation, which we've been famed for the last almost 18 years. It's a very flexible spirit. Broad shoulders, good body, it can handle a lot of weight. You can layer on top of it, but it will always still remain Benriach.
That's spot on. I'm sensing Warehouse 13.
Let's sneak right down there. And hopefully you can see we're just moving another, not only even 15 meters. We're going to go down this little lane, and we will see our filling store on the right-hand side, which is actually attached to the still house building. So from the still house, the spirit is just pumped into the vat room next door. The boys do all their work there. Sorry, boys and girls, because we do have or ladies and gentlemen, because we do have a cross-section of everybody working at the distillery. And from there, once you've filled your cask, basically we're rolling straight into the warehouses. So beautiful distillery to work. Actually, in the distillery itself, there's only three operators doing a 3-shift cycle. And at the moment, we only have 3 warehouse operators. So again, very tight, very small, very tight band of people dedicated to making Benriach from start to finish. Now, you've been in here as well, Warehouse 13. This probably captures a little bit of that atmosphere. This is, again, the old 1898 dunnage warehouse from when the distillery was founded back in 1898. But what amazing, I think, one of the most outstanding warehouses, actually, when you look at the selection of casks that we do have in this Warehouse 13 particularly. And think of this. Sorry, carry on, Linus.
I was just saying, you're right. It's truly a mythical place. It's amazing. Just picture me hugging barrels there. It's it's pretty cool.
Everything in there, from octaves to quarter casks, barrels, hogsheads, wine barriques, Oloroso butch, PX puncheons, and everything in between. We've probably got about 35 or so, 40 even different styles of casks that we're working on. And if you think about this warehouse particularly, think of this as Rachel Barry's larder, our master blender's larder. So you can go into the warehouse, so you can take that fantastic work we've been doing over the decades and use that as our ingredients to then build the new core range that we have in the market here. So yeah, this is Rachel's larder of ingredients, let's say. And it has been a dedication of, let's call it, goodness, when did they start the peated whiskies? Back in the early 70s, for example, which you would never see, I don't think anybody else in Speyside to have that age of peated expressions running through it. We've been doing secondary maturation work right back for almost 18 years, going back to 2004. Through that time, you learn how far you can push your casks. When do you move it? When do you have to move it? Does it need full maturation? So you have a lot of learning as you go through your warehouses. And I think we're at a point now at Benriach where we really have almost looked at every angle of how Benriach performs in cask, in wood. And we really have honed that art to give Rachel the ingredients that she can work with today.
Sure, you put many of these barrels down. Can you talk us through like a single barrel selection and how that work and that journey?
Sure. Funnily enough, I was up at the distillery just what was that? Maybe just after Christmas there. Sorry, after New Year, and they were bringing together the 12-year-old, the new 12-year-old. And if you look at that, the sheet itself, for example, that Rachel will send to the guys up at the distillery. It's not just going in and saying, give me 70 of these. It's not just taking one style and it's I call a spreadsheet whiskey that's going to come together from one style or one area. When Rachel gets a sample program sent to her to analyse and taste these casks to find which one she'll use, the guys will then get that information back up and it'll be one of this, one of this, one of this. So she's hand-picking each barrel individually to enter into that expression. And that for me is what makes it exciting. And actually, even then, she's not finished. Once she's made that initial selection, the warehouse team have brought that together. They will then send her another sample. She will taste it again and to see if she needs to even fine-tune it. If she can tweak it here, another bourbon barrel, another virgin oak, or another bit of peat, how she can balance it out. So there's always that secondary, let's say, tweaking of that recipe to make sure she's keeping that consistency each time in bottle. So very much hands-on, very much barrel by barrel, rather than a spreadsheet kind of operation. When it comes to the single cask, like the ones we're going to, the cask additions, this is also a great place to keep these as well. The cask additions are casks that will go through the warehouse and you'll do your annual checks. even sometimes 3 or 4 times a year, you'll look at the casks. And then you're always noting down, now, is there something different with this cask? Is there something different with this cask? You keep that in your head. You make a note of that. You maybe put that aside and think, right, let's see what we can do with this. I want to keep that and see if it can go further. It'll develop, a more different nuance, maybe to the character that we would expect. So the cask additions have really been looked at for, maybe many years over their time in cask, and have been selected to really show something and showcase their own individual character. And I'm sure we will taste that here as we go through the beautiful PX cask for the Whisky Club.
Yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing. And I think a person saying, "Wish you had a smell-o-vision," and he's absolutely right. The smells and your aromas throughout the whole distillery, and obviously in Welsh 13, are just tremendous.
And there's nothing better than the smell of a Dunwich warehouse. You've got that earth floor, the dark walls, the low wooden beams, the whiskey evaporating out there, the wood. It's absolutely an experience itself. Just nosing in there, it's absolutely beautiful, beautiful.
Absolutely amazing. All right. Well, I think everyone's just loving this virtual tour, and obviously this will be recorded on Facebook. You can go back and rewatch it again, and hopefully at some stage we can get on a plane, and we'd love to have you there. And I can't wait myself personally to go and check it out, because it is new and improved. That tasting is tremendous. I'm getting homesick. Here we go.
Yeah, we'll do a quick flyby here. As I said, we touched on the floor maltings earlier. Floor maltings ran for a full 100 years, 1898 to 1998, and it did close down. And actually, one of my last jobs before I left production was to get the floor maltings up fit for purpose again. It didn't need much. We actually just hooked up a new water supply to the steeps that we're seeing there. We sorted out the drains, and then we did a bit of work on the electric side, new fuse box, a couple of new switches. But other than these two things, the water supply and a little update of the electrics is very much as it was, I would say, even back in 1898. So extremely traditional in its style. The floor we were on up there, purely just a storage floor. So what you would see there is just pyramids of barley stacked up, ready to go to the steeps. And the steeps would be the end. After you've had the 3-day steep time, building that perfect moisture content in there, we then will drop that down, and with using the carts, the carriages, we then spread the barley onto the germination floor beneath. Beautiful building, it really is.
Yeah, of course. I will say that actually, like, turning the barley is actually when I was there, we got to do it. It's actually really hard work, just quietly.
It is. No, it's quite funny. After one drag and take a couple of photographs, it's like, okay, that's enough. So you can imagine this is a 10-ton floor. 10 ton would be spread across that floor, roughly about maybe what would that be, 5-6 inches deep, and having to turn it and spread it when necessary. The floor the maltings here, it's a relatively cold floor. It's slightly down below the level of the ground itself. So sometimes it's the colder nature of the floor means that it takes a bit longer to start that germination, but it is really quite stable, and you don't have to overturn it as you go through its germination time on the floor itself. So it's amazing. It's amazing to get that up and running again. Again, I think there's 8 currently in Scotland, traditional floor maltings at distilleries, and there's only 2 in Speyside. So a great asset to have that. And when it comes to the malt season expression itself, that is what we're trying to capture. When you taste our malt season expression, the focus that Rachel was wanting to put on that is to get that maltiness running through it. And I love, again, how she's captured that. When you know it's the malt season, it's actually like going into the granary, into the malt barns, and you're smelling that beautiful barley note. So I love how she's really captured and focused her attention onto that maltiness that we produce.
Yeah, that is amazing. Thanks for the tour, mate. That's just getting me really homesick. I will try and get there this year for sure. It's unbelievable. I think from the comments that you guys are getting pretty keen to have a taste of a dram of the Benriach 13-year-old single cask. So you might just jump into that. But thank you. That honestly, that's the best thing you can do apart from getting on the plane and getting it yourself, and that's tremendous. So that's just amazing. But back to the start of the show, where obviously Stewart started the show, but also obviously the Benriach cask, 5303, 586 bottles, cheeky 61.2% ABV. It's a Pedro Ximénez Puncheon. Mate, this looks tremendous. I haven't tried it yet. I've been really good. I'm not going to crack it right now. I've been really good. I haven't cracked it. I wanted to have a sit with you guys. But straight away, mate, that colour, beautiful, rich, walnut colour is just tremendous.
It was the first thing that caught my eye. As soon as I took this out the tube, that mahogany colour for me, it was like, oh, I'm in heaven. And actually the bottle shot opening at the very start there, capturing that depth of the sherry influence. Oh, that's the amazing photography done there as well. I've not tasted myself. I've had this open up. I think it breathes a little. I've been having a little nose of it, but I haven't actually tasted myself. So looking forward to that. But as I say, you can look at that colour forever. You know, that real rich mahogany. It's almost got a polished note running through it as well. Just gleaming golden edges. Just really almost inviting you in to the whiskey itself. Also, like you run that around the glass, guys. Hopefully you'll see how it holds the glass, that viscosity we're talking about. Again, not oily, almost syrupy in nature. The texture is going to be just a beautiful velvety richness, but not an oily texture, keeping that almost syrupy nature to the expression. That is coming from, obviously, the distillery spirit, and also the addition of that very rich first fill PX puncheons we're using. Oh,
I smell it from here. It's just tremendous.
Honest to goodness. Hopefully, everybody out there, as you knows this, you maybe get the first reaction I did. It's just like, gee, you can actually get your nose right in this. Sometimes a 61, high ABV expression, maybe you can't get your nose right in there and get the true essence of the dram. But even at 61.2, you can get in there and pull out all these dramatic characters. The first wave is, for me, the PX, I suppose, comes first. That lovely, almost cherry cake, the chocolates, the kind of little bits of that beautiful orange note running through it. That, for me, is that first wave which just flows out the glass.
But you're right, it's soft. It's not like harsh. It's soft.
No.
It's you just like seeps into it. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think one of the important things as well is always having a contrast of spice against all of the sweet characters. Because you do have to remember the Benriach new make spirit is already sweet. It's already got a sugary nature of the barley to it. It's already got a fruit forward, ripe orchard fruit character to it. And then we're talking about big impacting notes from the sherry cask, the PX cask. But you've got to remember we still need some oak, some additional spice to give you that contrast, sweet and spice come together. And even in the nose in here, you can still get that little prickle of your nose, just making sure you've got that beautiful contrast of both. Yeah. Almost a wee grind of black pepper, let's say, just to give you that.
I remembered while I was listening to Stewart waxing lyrical over it that this was one of the last samples that I got to play with as a cask sample while I was still working for you. And I remember it sticking out at the time. I think it was with a rum cask and a muscatel cask it was sent. And I mean, I know that it's kind of un-PC to talk about the color of a whiskey, and we should always talk about the flavor, but sometimes it's really fun to talk about the color of a whiskey. It's a really fun color.
Yeah. I think as well, you could wax lyrical about it forever, because it's not only just a mahogany. You can almost get drawn into these little golden flecks and, how it just dances in the glass. It's just, you make this whiskey last a long time. Yes, of course, sip and savour, enjoy the flavour, but I get as much enjoyment from nosing and actually looking at the glass and just appreciating it as a whole.
Absolutely. I think the reason I really fell in love with this, I'd love to, I guess, have you explain a little bit why this is happening with the glass, but it's a sherry bomb, obviously. There's an enormous amount of cask influence, but it's still really balancing off with the bright character that I fall in love with Benriach for. Is that just a tribute to the spirit and how much it can stand up to a cask?
I think you're exactly right, Seamus. That Benriach spirit, as much as it is sweet forward and malty forward, It has got, I always say it's got broad shoulders. It can carry a lot of weight. It's elegant, it's refined, but it can carry a lot of weight. You can throw a lot at it and it'll still remain Benriach. And as you mentioned, Benriach should always be bright and fresh and crisp. I always joke, even with our 1966 cask, Benriach never gets old. It always stays vibrant. And you know, it does have that welcoming character to it. It's not flavours we're not familiar with. As drinkers and consumers out there, these are flavours we know, which actually makes it more comfortable as you enjoy it. You're not having to struggle to try and find, oh, what is this little flavour I'm getting here? It's open flavours we're all familiar with, which again brings that additional layer of almost comfortable nature when you enjoy it. You're in your comfort zone. You're not searching. Your mind's not busy. You can sit back and relax and just enjoy this.
I like how the nose it opens up as well. So you're kind of like nectarines now.
As I'm nosing it and going back and forward, I had that first wave, you know, of the PX forward note. When I go back in, I said I'm getting that contrast of spice. When I go back in again, I'm still trying to now look for the Benriach character. What's the signature Benriach? And you can still get that apple, maybe the lighter orchard fruit notes through the heavyweight of the PX. So you will still get this lovely apple note that's going to run through it. The orchard fruit signature Benriach. Little bit of almond. You're starting, not quite moving into the marzipan, which you sometimes talk about sherry, but just enough of that little almond to give you another layer of contrast in there. Just touching to that beautiful nuttiness that we can also look for. Right, a wee sip. Slangevin.
Slangevin, mate.
Oh.
Are you saying these casks were getting harder and harder to find? And this is where I make my public pitch to get more of them for the Whisky Club. But also, I mean, is that just Benriach's growing and growing and more people are falling in love with it? Or are we running out of whiskey?
Again, I love how we've worked with you guys in the club. You know, I think we really offered you, you know, the offerings you have are really exceptional offerings there, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so. When I look at this expression, just on the taste there, I just barely put that in my tongue. I barely covered my tongue and just let that flow to the back, coat your palate. And for me, you don't have to actually physically drink this whiskey. You actually put it in your tongue and let the whiskey do its work. The big flavour, and you think, oh, is this going to get too strong? I can feel now the alcohol, the 61 ABV, but almost as soon as it reaches that peak of thinking that ABV is going to be too strong, it breaks and goes right back into that softness. So even how it reacts to your palate, a beautiful journey of the sweet, rich sherry cask style, that lovely alcohol and strength of a single cask, but then breaking right back into this long finish and exposing the Benriach characters, and even, which I'm getting now, even the barley right at the back. So we're going through that multiple layers that we're exposing with this cask.
I think people are saying like, oh, do you have to add water? And you can by all means. I think what Stewart said about putting in your mouth, getting that natural dilution from your palate before you add water, and that should work just as well. But I also think it drinks way below that 61% ABV.
Yeah.
Still soft, elegant, depth of flavours there. It's an absolute cracker again.
One thing I like about cask strength whiskies, again, you do have that flexibility to add that water in, reduce that down to your own personal strength. But you've got to remember, I want to sit with this for a long time. I want to open this up. I want to enjoy it. I want to maybe take my time, sip and savour this expression. Your palate will change as you go through that as well. So that first sip, even the second sip, is actually only about getting your body used to the whiskey. It's the third, fourth, fifth sip that maybe you can start diving in, getting the characters. And the temptation is, if you put water in too early, you can't take it out again. I think when you go through sipping this whiskey, your palate's getting used to that strength, and it'll just continue to actually open up. It'll continue to, let's say, ripen and richen as you go through sip by sip by sip. And that's also what I love about, you know, any whiskey. You want that whiskey to continually change and give you another layer of experience as you enjoy it from start to finish. So it's not just the same sip you're getting at the start to the end.
Benriach never ever ceases to surprise me. It really, you're right. There's broad shoulders, heavy lifting. It's after so many different casks and barrels. It never surprised me. It's genuinely a really complex whiskey that can just you play with casks.
So even that second sip for me, I didn't get the same pitch in the ABV. It was flattened, but it did pull out into more of the spice slightly earlier. So again, I just love looking at how every sip is changing. It's actually truly a journey in itself when you taste these single cask expressions, these cask additions.
Another absolute win for the Whiskey Club, eh? Well done, Seamus. This is an absolute cracker.
What I couldn't find, I was looking for it when I left the house this morning, but I was looking for my PX sherry. I think I finished that maybe just over Christmas. I drank too much PX. But I do like also having a little glass of PX beside me, just to, again, almost sense check the nose, look at what we're drawing, what's the distillery character, what's that PX character. So I urge you all, I'm sure you guys do it. I know Australian-wise, your level of knowledge is up there, if not one of the best in the world as far as the nature of your knowledge. But that little sense check is always a nice wee thing to go back and forward between the cask style and the glass to try and denote where these flavours are derived from.
I know we're running out of time, but a good question for you, Stu. So how do you use PX normally in our core range or other Benriach expressions?
Well, that's a great thing. Again, going back to that warehouse picture, imagine yourself in that warehouse. What Rachel has done with the new range, which you can see behind us, she's actually looked at all the work we've been doing over the last almost 18 years in that secondary maturation, in that eclectic cask fill. And now she's able to go in and choose and hand select the cask she's going to use throughout. There were two 10-year-olds, the original 10 and the smoky 10. These are more American barrel leg. A little bit of sherry in there. The original 10 is a little bit of Oloroso, just to add this nuttiness, this little kind of edgy citrus note in there. But where the PX comes into the fore is in our 12-year-olds. So almost the same as this. Our 12-year-old will hold older whiskey in there in combination, because Rachel will use a wider, broader range of even years in her expressions. If you look at the 12 and the smoky 12, you maybe start to find some of these PX notes. The PX notes, let's say, for example, in the 12-year-old, just called the 12, that's what's going to start to bring these beautiful cherry characters. You almost get the cherry, the orange, the dark chocolates. These are the three main characters I find that are coming from the PX cask, particularly in the 12-year-old expression.
Awesome.
Amazing.
I know we've gone a little bit out of time, but I think this is such an exciting thing to do, to get that virtual tour. So a big thank you to Stewart, also to Doug Cook, who's the guy behind the scenes who's been navigating that tour. Honestly, I'm getting really homesick. I want to be there so badly. It looks amazing, the new taste of him. And again, thanks to Seamus and the boys of Whiskey Club. You've been tremendous supporters. You always pull out these crazy, excellent, super tasty casks. And it's means well. And also thanks to the folks who've jumped online as well. And these comments are always the best comments. Like, you guys know your stuff. Like, you are serious connoisseurs. So thank you guys for your ongoing support.
Yeah. Again, thank you guys. As ever, there's never enough time. But I'm glad we spent a little bit of time to take you through the distillery there. So I'm sure I'll look back at the questions in the comments, and Leonard, we can all chat together if there's anything else we want to add to further conversation on this. But again, thank you very much, guys, for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. And as much as I think we'd like to say that we're picking good casks, I think we're picking good people to work with. So you guys certainly make it easy for us when you deliver amazing cask samples, and we get to go, which one of these amazing whiskies would we like to make sure we're bringing to our members? So you make it incredibly easy. I wouldn't be the voice, I guess, of the Whiskey Club if I didn't do a cheeky last pitch for a little extra detail, and that would be Stewart. Obviously, there's a depth of sherry casks and port casks and traditional fortifieds in that warehouse. Are there many Australian fortifieds, though? Are we ever going to see a cheeky Australian musket cask or anything coming out?
We don't have. But I think one thing I can maybe allude to why that is the case, because when we want the casks arriving at our doorstep, the route from A to B has to be as quick and as fresh as possible. Now, we had ventured into some South African wines from the previous partners that owned the distillery before, because we knew we could get them quick, boom, boom, get them filled fresh as possible. That's the only downfall when we look at journey time, is making sure we're harnessing the best cask. As every cask arrives, we knows it. If it's anything off, anything notes, sometimes you've got a sour note if it's been overly, caught an infection, or if it's just journeyed too long, or you might get even sometimes a vinegary note is what you're getting told to look for if it's a cask that's no good. So as cask arrives, everyone's nosed, and we only fill ones that are in perfect condition. I think Australia's just a little bit too far away to maintain that.
Yeah, I mean, Linus, it sounds like we know what we're doing this summer. We're going to get an airplane and ride some casks to Scotland. I mean, it sounds like the obvious choice there, right?
If you can get it from A to B as quick as possible, that's a deal.
We'll make it happen, mate. We'll make it happen. But yeah, honestly, thank you so much, guys. You're always so good to work with, and thank you for the tour around the distillery. It takes me back to a few years ago seeing it, and I hope the members, I know the members have enjoyed it too. For all the members who did tune in tonight, as you can see, hosted on YouTube. At the moment, we're trying to bring it to a few new people. So if you are watching on YouTube, I'm going to do the classic YouTube thing. Like and subscribe, ring the bell, all the stuff. But also we've got Glenn Fiddick doing a wonderful distillery tour for us next week. And then we've got the lovely gents from Tullibardine taking us around as well. So thank you, Bundle, for tuning in tonight, guys. Before I forget, with the roundup as well, we have our winner of the whiskey. It's been very sneakily sent to me. I'm going to make sure I get the names right. John McDonald, congratulations to you. You can do the head-to-head whiskey tasting. So it'll be this PX single cask versus a wonderful butt. And you'll have to let us know what you think of that as well. But thank you, guys. Thank you again, Linus. Stewart, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stuart. Really appreciate it. Amazing. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Cheers.
Yeah.